Welcome to video 2 of the biology videos, and this one is about diffusion. Make sure you've got a pad and a pen ready because there'll be some questions at the end for you to have a go at. So let's think about diffusion. So what is diffusion? Now, there's lots of writing on these PowerPoints, which if you want to copy down later, you can, but I'm going to be explaining what's in the boxes, so don't worry about writing it all down at the moment. So diffusion is very simple, but it's really important. It comes up a lot in science and a lot in science questions. And very simply put, particles will move from where there's a lot of particles, like these blue particles here, to where there's not many particles. So in effect, they will spread out as much as they can, and that is diffusion. Okay, so let's have a look at it scientifically. Area with lots of particles, area with less particles. But if we put that in a question, that's not going to get us a mark, okay? So this happens in gases and it happens in liquids, which people forget, but it can't happen in solids. The reason it can't happen in solid is because the particles in solids can't move, so they can't spread out. But in gases and liquids, they can. So diffusion happens in gases and liquids. Now, instead of saying where there are lots of particles to where there are not many particles, the correct term for biology is an area of higher concentration to an area of lower concentration. So the particles move from an area of higher concentration to an area of lower concentration. Okay, if we say spread out, probably not going to get us the marks. We need to be using those words. Okay, so let's have a look. Now it says here, lastly, diffusion is a net movement. Now what that means is overall, the particles will move from here to here. Okay, but because they move randomly, they may well not directly move to here. They may move around a bit here in ziggy-zaggy lines, completely random, but eventually they will end up all spread out. Particles are always moving, especially in a gas. So they're always moving and they're moving random directions. Okay, so that's what net movement means. Right, we've got lots of writing here, but let's think about it. Diffusion happens because particles are always moving. So I'm going to show you an animation here on the right hand side. And we start off with two gases, orange and black. And they're separate to start with. But as the particles move randomly, they actually spread out. So the orange ones are spreading out and the black ones are spreading out. And what happens is eventually, it's just starting again. Eventually, they will end up completely spread out across this box. Now, they might not go directly to the side that has got the lower concentration, but eventually they will spread out and fill that box. So there's a net movement of particles from an area of higher concentration to an area of lower concentration. Okay, so this, if you're going to write anything down, this is the definition. You can always pause the video if you need to. Our key definition: diffusion is the spreading out of particles from an area of high concentration to an area of low concentration. Diffusion is a net movement of particles, and diffusion occurs to particles of a gas and to particles of a substance in solution. That's our key takeaways from this little bit. Now, this experiment here, you can probably see, is one that comes up a lot in exam papers. So we start with plain water here. Now, this one, they're adding purple ink, but there's also another version where we add a purple solid called potassium permanganate. And when we drop that into the water, it starts off all in the same place. But those purple particles gradually diffuse throughout the water, diffuse throughout that liquid, And what we end up with in the end is they're spread all the way across and the whole of our water has gone purple. So this is a very famous experiment, this one, and it comes up a lot in your exam papers. So make sure you understand what's happening here. Clear water, add in the purple liquid or the purple solid. Particles spread out from a high concentration to a low concentration, and eventually they've spread all the way around the liquid and it's all become purple, just like our orange gas particles did in the last one. Okay, now why are we looking at diffusion? Because we're in the middle of cells. Well, if you remember from video 1, we talked about the cell membrane. And the cell membrane, it holds the cell together, but it also controls what substances enter and leave the cells. So you can probably tell which one of these is a plant cell and which is an animal cell. This is an animal cell. We know that because it's got one membrane around the outside, the cell membrane. This is a plant cell. And just to recap, the three things the plant cell has is a vacuole in the middle, a chloroplast where photosynthesis takes place, and around the outside it has a cell membrane, this dotted one here, but it has the added benefit of a cell wall to keep the cell shape. So why are we looking at diffusion? Well, diffusion is one way that substances can enter or leave a cell, because substances need to be able to get in and out. They need to be able to get in for respiration. They need to be able to get in for photosynthesis. Waste products need to be able to get out. So it's very important that cells can monitor what goes in and out. Now, some substances won't go in and out, like proteins, they're too big. So it's more small particles that go in this way. So they diffuse across the cell membrane. So oxygen, for example, would diffuse into the cell here for respiration. Then we'd produce carbon dioxide, and then that would diffuse out because we want to get rid of it. Okay, so this is why we're doing diffusion. Again, lots of writing. Lots of things are transported in and out of cells by diffusion. However, the one that you will be asked about the most is this first one, oxygen and carbon dioxide during gas exchange. So that's the one that we'll be looking at the most. When we do surface areas and alveoli and things like that, we're looking at it a bit more. You may be asked about glucose diffusing in. And this one does come up occasionally. In humans, urea leaves cells and enters the blood plasma before being excreted by the kidneys. This one comes up only in higher, and when we do the kidneys and homeostasis, we'll look at it in a bit more detail. As I said before, some substances are too large, so starch is too large to pass in or out. Proteins are too large to pass in. So it's generally smaller molecules that enter by diffusion. Now, we have to remember as well that plants photosynthesize, but they also respire. It's just when there's lots of light around, there's more photosynthesis. But at nighttime, plants respire as well. So during photosynthesis, when it's daytime, carbon dioxide will be diffusing in and oxygen will be diffusing out. But at nighttime, when they're carrying out respiration, just like we do, oxygen will be diffusing in and carbon dioxide will be diffusing out. All right, so we need to remember that. Now, some questions for you. So if you want to pause the video here, you could have a go at these little questions. I'm going to mark them as if they're examiner's marks. So looking for key words, because this is a biology video. We need biology words. So pause the video now and see if you can have a go at these. Okay, hopefully you've had a good go at these questions. So here are our answers. Write a definition for diffusion. Now, these are written as they would be in the mark scheme. So we can have a look at these marks. Diffusion is the spreading out of particles. That's 1 mark. From an area of high concentration to an area of low concentration. That's the 2nd mark. Okay, so very specific on definitions. What substances can diffusion happen to? First one, particles of a gas, 1 mark. And particles of a substance in solution or a dissolved substance, 1 mark. Well done if you got those. Number 3, what is the function of the cell membrane? Here we go. To control what substances enter and leave the cell, 1 mark. If it was a 2 marker, you could also have and also hold the cell together, but the most important one is what enters and leaves the cell. Number 4, there is a lower concentration of carbon dioxide outside a cell than inside. Which way will the carbon dioxide diffuse? So it's going to diffuse out of the cell from an area of high concentration to an area of low concentration. Now, see that's in brackets there, that second bit. So we don't actually need that bit that's in brackets. So out of the cell would be fine. It's just there to help it make more sense. Right, number 5. Will any carbon dioxide molecules move the other way? Explain your answer. So yes, because diffusion is a net movement. So that means an overall movement. So some molecules will still move in the opposite direction. And then, however, the overall movement is from higher to lower concentration. So 1 for net movement, 1 some move in the opposite direction, and 1 overall movement is higher to lower concentration. So that was a 3 marker, that one. Okay, let's have a look at the last couple. 6. There is a higher concentration of starch outside a cell than inside it. Explain why it will not enter the cell. Okay, so starch is a really long molecule. So starch is too large, 1 mark, to diffuse across the cell membrane, 1 mark. Number 7, animal cells require oxygen and glucose for respiration. Respiration produces carbon dioxide as a waste product. Other processes in animal cells also produce urea as a waste product. So this is a higher question, so it's got urea in it. State 2 substances that enter animal cells via diffusion. So we've got glucose here and oxygen. And 2 substances that leave animal cells by diffusion, carbon dioxide and urea. Okay, now a little challenge one was explain why diffusion occurs. It occurs because particles are always moving in random directions. And if they're moving randomly, they will eventually fill up the space that they've got or spread out. Okay, so well done. Give yourself a pat on the back if you've got most of those correct. If you didn't, that's fine. You can go back over it and have another go. Right, now the other thing we need to look at, excuse me, I've got an itch, is the rate of diffusion. So rate means how fast something is happening. So for example, we could say the rate of diffusion is fast, or we could say the rate of diffusion is 100 particles in a minute, or we could say the rate of diffusion is 7 particles in a second. Okay, but it has to be usually some sort of time, or diffusion is faster or greater. Now we can actually speed diffusion up. And there's 3 ways we can do that. We can change the concentration gradient. We could change the temperature. Or we could change the surface area of the cell membrane. Okay. So we're going to look at each of these in turn. the concentration gradient. Now, if you haven't heard the term concentration gradient, all that means is the difference between the highest concentration and the lowest concentration. So if we have a look down here, this cell here has got 4 blue on the outside. I think it's got 2. I've got a thing over it, but I think it's got 2 blue inside. So 4 and 2. So the difference isn't very big. Whereas this one, we've got 2 on the inside, but we've got 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12 on the outside. So the difference is a lot bigger. So this one here has a higher concentration gradient. So this one in bold, the rate of diffusion will be faster if the concentration gradient is greater. Okay, so if you're going to copy anything down, it will be this one. So they'll both diffuse in. This one will diffuse in, and this one will diffuse in, but this one will diffuse in faster because there's a bigger difference between the number of particles. Okay, so that's a concentration gradient. Now let's have a look at the next one. Now, what eventually happens is the rate starts to slow down because if we have a look here, there's none of these blue particles in the middle, but there's 8 on the outside. So this is going to be quite quick because there's a big difference. But as they move in, the difference between the particles on the outside and the inside are less. So the rate starts to slow down. And then when we get to here, actually, there's 4 on the inside and 4 on the outside. So can you guess what's going to happen there? If there's 4 on the inside and 4 on the outside, there's no concentration gradient anymore. So they're not going to diffuse. Okay. Right, I think temperature. Now you probably know that particles are always moving and that particles tend to move faster when it's warmer. And the reason being they've got more energy because that heat gives them energy. So what that means is in this one, the particles are moving quite slowly. So they will diffuse into the cell. But they're going to do it quite slowly because they're not moving very quickly. Whereas this one, the particles have a lot more energy. And if they've got a lot more energy, they're going to be moving faster. And that means they're going to be moving into the cell faster. So again, if we look at this line here in bold, this means that the rate of diffusion is faster at higher temperatures. Okay, so they're both going to move in, but the cool one, particles don't have so much energy. So they're going to move more slowly. And in this one, they're going to move more quickly. So this is going to be the greater rate of diffusion. Okay, well done. Right, last one of these 3 factors that affect the diffusion rate. Here we go in bold. The rate of diffusion across the cell membrane is faster if the cell membrane has a larger surface area. Okay, so we think of cells generally as a square or a circle, but actually some of the specialized cells, particularly root hair cells, have a projection like this to make the surface area bigger. So what that means is this area around the cell is larger. If we measured around each cell, this one would measure larger than the other one. Now, very simply put, both of these are going to diffuse in, absolutely. But this one has less cell membrane to diffuse into. So this one's going to diffuse in slowly. But these have got all this extra area here of cell membrane. So they're going to diffuse in more quickly. Okay, and one of those is a root hair cell. There are other ones, but so this one will have a faster rate of diffusion. Okay, so that's our 3 factors that we've looked at there. Now, there's some questions here just to bring your attention up here. If you haven't seen moles per decimeter cubed, that's the term we use for solutions. So 0.8 moles per decimeter cubed is a less concentrated solution than 1.2 moles per decimeter cubed. Okay, so the bigger the number, the more concentrated the solution. So pause the video now, have a go at these questions. Right, hopefully you've had a little go and you pause the video. Let's see how we got on. Again, we're looking for biology words, because it's biology after all. So number one, what is meant by the rate of diffusion? How quickly or how fast diffusion is happening? That would be 1 mark. State the 3 factors that will increase the rate of diffusion. So we've just talked about these. First one, a larger concentration gradient. Second one, a higher temperature. And third one, a larger surface area of the cell membrane or the membrane. Well done if you got those 3. You might have had to go back in the video, but that's fine, that's how we learn. Number 3, what is meant by the term concentration gradient? So people find this one a struggle to define, but learn this definition: the difference in the concentrations across the cell membrane. Now remember, if it's in brackets, you don't have to have it. It just makes it make more sense. So to get the mark, you'd have to say the difference in the concentrations. Okay, well done. Number 4. So this is where you would need this up here. Concentration can be measured in mole per decimeter cubed. Look at the 2 cells top right. In which cell will the rate of diffusion be greater? So this is to do with concentration gradient. So we're looking at the difference between these numbers. So in between 0.8 and 1.2, the difference is 0.4. Whereas in between 0.8 and 1, the difference is 0.2. So this one has a higher concentration gradient. So our answer is cell A, the rate of diffusion will be greater because the concentration gradient is higher. In the image top right, which direction will diffusion occur? So it's we've got a higher concentration inside, so it's going to move out of the cells. You can even just say out. That's enough to get you the mark. So well done on those. Right, number 6. Again, a little bit harder now. So these are 3 markers. People tend to drop odd marks on these. So where it says explain, we're looking for 3 points, each with a biology word in, because this is where we're going to use our biology terms. Explain why a higher temperature increases the rate of diffusion. Okay, so 1, particles are always moving. 2, at higher temperatures, the particles have more energy. And 3, move faster, or which increases the rate of diffusion. Okay. Right, these last 2 are higher, but let's have a look. Digested food molecules enter our blood by diffusing into the cells that line our small intestines. Explain why these cells have lots of folds in their cell membrane. Folds or projections, the answer is always going to be surface area, but we need 3 marks. So 1 for it increases the surface area. 1, this increases the rate of diffusion. That's 2 marks. Or you could have allow more food molecules to diffuse across. And the last little challenge, excuse me, oxygen diffuses from the air inside the lungs into the red blood cells and capillaries. The red blood cells are taken away quickly by the flow of blood. Explain why this is important. Okay, if the red blood cells are taken away quickly, it maintains the concentration gradient. So there's always a concentration gradient there. Otherwise, the red blood cells wouldn't be able to absorb the oxygen. But when blood flows, the red blood cells coming along don't have any oxygen, so it maintains the concentration gradient. Don't worry too much about this one. If you've got the others right, fabulous.